advice, and the doctors in the case have already testified before anyone else could be heard from that they understand perfectly what medicine they gave her, how she responded to treatment, how normal the disorder was, how predictable was the recovery. But you're going to be told quite soon from St. Peter's Square in Rome that this was a miracle and it fulfills the conditions for this terrible woman to be made into a saint. I watched every stage of this. I saw it happen. I went to Calcutta. I've talked to and interviewed people who were concerned in the miracle case. I was asked myself by the Vatican to come and testify against the ridiculous canonization and beatification of this woman. I know how religion gets started. And it gets started because we like our illusions and because the world, the realm of illusion, is very, very precious to us. But again, the matter for this evening is, does deism, theism, or atheism best explain reality? And once again, I don't think my explanation fails. How am I doing for time?
8 minutes.
Bloody good. This question of the beginning of things is, of course, very important. And if you think that it must have had a beginner as well as a beginning, that it's not just a design or an apparent design, but it must have had a designer, you are only asking for another question to be asked, which is, who created this creator? Who designed this designer? Who fixed up this prime mover? Who was the prime mover for that prime mover? The common word for this in logic and some philosophy courses is it's an infinite regression. It doesn't really get you anywhere, but as I say, it wouldn't get you to religion, even if you could prove that there must have been a prime mover. It wouldn't get you to the worship of other human beings as if they were prophets or saviors or redeemers. It can't help you get there. You have to believe that as a matter of faith or not. You can't do it from physics. There's furthermore, I think, an almost insuperable ontological problem involved here. Suppose it to be true. Suppose that I concede it. Suppose there must be such a designer or an individual, an intelligence, something like a person that does this. How could I know it? Which person is smarter, sufficiently smarter, perhaps I should say, smart enough, smarter than me, smarter than anyone here, smarter, I dare say, even than Frank, to know this person and what's in his mind? I submit that it's not possible for another human being to tell you he knows this to be true, any more than it's possible for me to tell you, which I don't try and do, because I'm not unreasonable in this way, that I know it isn't true. But don't you see that there's all the difference in the world between my saying I can't know it and Frank saying, well, I can't prove it, because he wants you to believe it's necessary so that you will then become Christian. And I say that that's a leap that you simply cannot make, and you certainly can't make on the basis of evidence. And I think the religious would be much better to leave evidence alone where they don't excel, and to concentrate on faith, where at least they can claim some kind of monopoly. I'm not terribly impressed either by the argument that's advanced so often these days. Remember, all the Christian propositions were complete and absolutely in place. The resurrection, the healing of, not the healing, the forgiveness of sin, all of these, the virgin birth, the fatherhood of God, the sonhood of Jesus, the Adam and Eve story, all of these things were completely believed and promulgated by the Christian church long before there was any knowledge of the Big Bang or of evolution. So what they're doing is essentially a reverse engineering job. Okay, now we do know these things, most of them established, discovered, published in the teeth of religious opposition. Now we know them, that proves we were right all along. God was even cleverer than we thought. This is just plagiarism. It's just borrowing from other disciplines to make it all come right. And if we're going to talk about beginnings, we better have a bit of a word about ends. Had we not? About the end, we know a great deal. We know, as Edwin Hubble discovered some time ago, that the universe is expanding at a very, very rapid rate. This is known as the red light shift effect. It was thought by most physicists that wouldn't go on at the same rate for very long, that the rate at which everything was racing away from itself would diminish. The sort of Newtonian logic would suggest that. In fact, it's been shown very recently by a brilliant physicist named Lawrence Krauss that the Hubble rate is actually increasing. Things are flying apart much, much faster than we thought. Very soon, in fact, it won't be possible probably to see the red light shift or the other traces of the original Big Bang anymore. the end is really coming on us at an increasing rate of speed. So out of our something, to reverse the question that keeps being asked with such suggestiveness, out of our something, a great deal of nothing is coming. So who's the creator and designer of that, may I inquire? And meantime, as any astronomer can tell you, if you look in the sky at night, you can almost, without a telescope, see the Andromeda galaxy heading towards us. It's not very far off in astronomical time. The Andromeda galaxy is headed direct collision course with our own. We know that's going to happen. There's a lot of nothingness headed our way. And that's if we have time. That's if our sun does not swell up, burn out, our oceans boil, everything come to an end. In the meantime, which is a certainty to happen at some point, whether the other things happen before or after or not. So whose design exactly is that? How does it come that just in the tiny suburb of our bit of the cosmos, the little solar system that we inhabit, all of the other planets are either much too hot or much too cold to support anything like a life, as is true of great parts of our own planet? How is that? Some design, some designer. How is it that 99.9% of all the species that have ever been on Earth, ever, recorded, have gone extinct, as we very nearly did ourselves as a species in the very early dawning years of our existence in Africa, which has now been mapped? Very nearly went out of business altogether. Who designed that contingency? Whose plan and caprice is this? In other words, if you were to rephrase all these arguments of science and natural law and so forth, to assume that they work better with a God, you're just as badly off as you would be otherwise, because the same laws and the same processes still apply. You just say that they're set in motion by a designer. In that case, he's responsible for the extinctions, he's responsible for the diseases, he's responsible for the chaos, for the dead planets, for the swirling chaos of the other galaxies, for the expanding rate at which nothingness is headed towards us. So this God, if he exists, must be one or some or all of the following: tinkering and incompetent, very capricious, very wasteful, and very cruel. Now, that is what you get, sir, if you make some deity responsible for the natural order as we observe it, which was the topic we were asked to address this evening. And I think I'd be trespassing on Frank's time if I went any further. So I'll reserve my remaining points for rebuttal. And I'm very grateful for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Dr. Turek has 10 minutes for rebuttal. Thank you.
I wish I had an English accent. Let me try and go down many of the things Christopher said. He said, I just proved deism, not theism. Notice the creation of life is not a deistic concept, neither is a resurrection of Christ a deistic concept. But I might ask Christopher later if he's a deist now. That would be good. He said he doesn't believe in miracles primarily because of David Hume. But I think Hume's argument is discredited. Hume said that the evidence for the regular is always greater than that for the rare, so you ought to always believe in the regular. The problem with the argument is, with that premise of the argument, is that the evidence for the regular isn't always greater than that for the rare. In fact, if Hume were here today, he would believe in the Big Bang. And that's a singular event. It hasn't happened over and over and over again. It's not the